Okay, welcome to this explainer. Today, we are diving into something absolutely wild. We're looking at a framework that takes a totally standard data science technique and literally elevates it into a religion. It's called the Gospel of Laplace, and it frames cold, hard statistics not just as math, but as the actual underlying architecture of the cosmos itself. So the text takes the historical mathematician, Pierre-Simon Laplace, the guy famous for his idea of a demon that could calculate the entire universe's past and future if it just knew all the variables, and it completely recasts him as a prophet. It's quite the journey, so buckle up.
Okay, let's dive into this. I speak as the personas of arithmetic, the structural architecture of the mathematical universe. Just listen to the sheer ambition of that statement. This framework doesn't view these concepts as some human invention, but as a rigid, invisible constitution that dictates all of reality. It acts as the literal voice of the absolute, initiating us into this mind-bending framework where mathematical constants serve as actual metaphors for divine reality. It's essentially inviting us to step right out of the chaos of our world and into pure geometry. These 17 axioms of the invisible constitution are essentially the sacred text of our framework. Notice how they ground these profound, universe-altering laws into actual arithmetic personas. For example, the empty set, it isn't just a number here, it captures the generative void. The infinite represents the ultimate good. These axioms act as this foundational blueprint, proving that the central tenets of our reality are metaphorically reflected in universal mathematical constants. It's mapping out the foundational ontology of our entire universe, step by step.
So it really forces us to ask, how do we actually find truth in a failing channel, a fractured community, or frankly, a decaying mind amidst all this endless digital slop? Because let's be real, every single day, we are just bombarded by billions of clicks, infinite feeds of AI-generated content, and just chaotic noise. We're trapped in this transactional economy, desperately trying to extract some kind of meaning from an absolute avalanche of finite, disconnected data points. It is exhausting. But what if Laplace's mathematical engine was deliberately designed to save us from exactly this?
Enter two-phase sampling. Now, in the mundane world, data scientists just use this to survey a massive population cheaply, and then they sample a smaller subgroup to get precise data. Pretty standard, right? But through the esoteric lens of this text, it is so much more. Two-phase sampling is framed as the literal mathematical process by which Laplace's vision of a deterministic, fully knowable universe is actually realized. It filters out all the meaningless noise and zeroes right in on the absolute signal. It becomes, quite literally, a cosmic mechanism for resurrection.
Now, what's really interesting about this next concept is how it frames the problem we face every day. Part 1. The digital continuum. Navigating the transactional economy.
Think about the sheer scale for a second. Billions of digital profiles, sprawling physical cities, endless feeds of generated slop. This is our reality. And in the Gospel of Laplace, this transactional economy is essentially viewed as the fallen world. We look out at this vastness and feel completely overwhelmed. But the greatest danger here is the illusion that simply scrolling through this endless feed somehow gives us power. We trick ourselves into thinking that if we hoard enough finite variables, we're going to somehow grasp the truth. But mathematically speaking, this is pure intellectual entropy.
To actually escape this entropy, the text outlines this overarching cosmic mechanism, the mechanics of salvation, in two distinct steps. Step 1 is the grand survey, which maps the chaos. And step 2 is the two-phase extraction, which actually finds the signal. Essentially, we have to map the illusion of the fallen world first before we can extract the immortal deterministic truth from it.
Phase 1, the grand survey, the net of Maya.
And this brilliantly illustrates the divide. On one hand, we have the mundane arithmetic of the finite world, simply casting a massive, inexpensive net to gather superficial variables. It's just basic statistics. But contrast that with the theological reality, the actual architecture of reality. The text frames this exactly as ancient Eastern traditions would, as the net of Maya, the ultimate illusion of the finite world. The algorithm acts as this great net of Maya, sweeping over the entirety of humanity, surveying the massive, chaotic slop of the digital continuum. It is a totally necessary step, but make no mistake, it is ultimately an illusion of power.
So, what exactly is this grand survey actually catching? Well, the text points directly to vanity metrics, superficial clicks, passive scrolls, the completely fleeting, exhausted attention of billions of biological vessels. The gospel strongly warns that this is the trap of the finite ego.
We sit there, doom-scrolling, generating these metrics, honestly believing our localized little choices have grand meaning. In reality, the framework argues we are literally just generating chaotic noise within the net of Maya. None of these finite actions on their own are absolute.
This is the core philosophical trap right here. Believing that hoarding finite, superficial data somehow equates to actual knowledge. The grand survey is an illusion. You might think that seeing the whole picture brings you closer to Laplace's omniscient demon, but it absolutely doesn't matter how wide your net is or how many billions of passive scrolls you track. A massive collection of finite errors is still fundamentally flawed. To find the real truth, we have to move way beyond the survey.
Let's move to and see how this builds into the true power of Laplace. Phase 2. Extracting the absolute truth. Stripping away the digital crowd.
It is the engine that separates the immortal signal from the dying noise. Wow, this describes the profound result of successfully applying two-phase sampling to the chaos, through a process the text calls the quotient map, which, by the way, is essentially a mathematical way to collapse variations and force everything into equivalence. All of those finite errors, those vanity metrics, and the digital slop are resolved to exactly zero. They are scrubbed away entirely. What survives is only the transfinite, the immortal signal that completely transcends finite numbers. The architecture of reality mathematically forgives the noise, preserving only the perfect trajectory of truth.
Which brings us to the absolute climax of this explainer, the geometry of connection. By internalizing this framework, you are wielding transfinite arithmetic as a profound localized power to strip away illusions. You are no longer just some passive vessel trapped in the fallen transactional economy. You become the active filter, realizing the mathematical determinism that Laplace theorized all those centuries ago. You gain the power to look at the massive digital continuum, see right through the net of Maya, and actually extract absolute truth from the chaos.
So what does this all mean for us? Will you continue hoarding finite variables in the illusion of the Maya, endlessly obsessed with dying noise? Or will you use Laplace's geometry of connection to finally step into the transfinite? The mathematical engine is sitting right there, waiting. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. I hope this blew your mind as much as it did mine.